particularly in governance, resource mobilization, and Africa's contribution to global biodiversity negotiations. Now, today we are joined by Dr. Cyril Taolo, Liaison Officer, Environment and Tourism Ministry and the Minister of Tourism and Environment, and Dr. Harsen Nyambe, Director for Sustainable Environment, Blue Economy from the African Union, to tell us more about Botswana's state of readiness and what to expect. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us on Botswana Television.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me start with Dr. Nyambe. Maybe you can give us a preview or an understanding of the summit. What is Biodiversity Summit is all about?
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. Biodiversity is important, not only as a natural heritage or as an asset in terms of cultural aspects, but it's also an economic arm of states. So basically it's with that in mind that our heads of state in their wisdom decided that we need to have a summit that is going to be dedicated to matters of biodiversity. And that also took into cognizance some of the challenges that the continent is facing when it comes to issues of biodiversity, be it climate change, be it loss of biodiversity, fragmentation of ecosystems and so forth. And so with that in mind, they said we need to come up with a summit so that we have got a political direction or policy direction in terms of where we are heading to, but also, of course, to mobilize support wherever possible so that we can achieve the objectives of our continent.
All right. Now, still with you, I understand, as already mentioned in the introduction, that this is the first ever summit to be hosted in Africa, and now it narrows down to us as Botswana. What does this mean to our country?
Well, indeed, it's for the first time that the African Union convenes a summit on matters of biodiversity. And of course, Botswana happened to be the host, and I think Botswana is one of the global leaders when it comes to issues of biodiversity, with more than probably about 130,000 elephants. You know, Botswana has actually positioned itself as a champion, and I think that means a lot to the country in terms of marketing the country's tourism assets, as well as making sure that you know, more resources, or at least there's revenue flowing into the country.
All right. Now coming to you, Dr. Taolo, how prepared is Botswana at this stage to host delegates from across Africa and the world?
Well, I think let me first of all start by greeting our viewers and really express the appreciation of Botswana for the opportunity to host the summit. As indicated, it is the first summit of this nature, and for us it is an opportunity to bring Africa to Botswana to come and showcase our biodiversity and how we have utilized our biodiversity to develop our economy. In terms of our preparations, we are ready. We are looking forward to welcoming almost 1,000 delegates and observers to Botswana. As indicated, this is a summit, so we will be looking forward to welcoming heads of state to Botswana, ministers, and other dignitaries who will come here to deliberate about biodiversity, how we can make our biodiversities work for our economies, how we can ensure that those who live side by side with biodiversity benefit meaningfully. In terms of the preparations, again, we have already registered well over 600 delegates. The expectation is that these delegates will come to Botswana, where they will require accommodation and other hospitality. So we are working to ensure that all of those are in place. We are also working with all the necessary stakeholders to ensure that our visitors have a safe and productive stay in Botswana.
That's incredible. Now, coming to you, Doctor, again, what are the themes to be deliberated on during this summit? You earlier on mentioned that it's not only about one thing, but it encompasses a lot. Maybe you can share with us what are the nuggets that would be shared during the summit?
Well, the summit will actually cover issues of biodiversity governance, issues of financing biodiversity, as well as socio-economic aspects, like, for example, how do the communities benefit when it comes to matters of biodiversity, and also our engagement at global level on matters of biodiversity. So basically, those are the 4 themes that we will be covering. Of course, they will also include issues of transboundary conservation areas and so forth.
All right. You earlier on mentioned that there are more than 600, confirmations of those who will be in attendance. Maybe what level of participation are you expecting with more than 1,000 of delegates coming over to Botswana? You earlier on mentioned that maybe presidents or even ministers will be here. What kind of engagement or participation we are talking about here?
Yes, as indicated, this is a summit, so it will be held at the head of state level. We are anticipating that heads of state will be coming with their delegates. In terms of the summit itself, it has been structured in such a way that we have got a technical segment where we will bring in technical delegates who will now come in to deliberate on the thematic areas that Dr. Nyambe has referred to. Following that discussion, there will be a ministerial segment where ministers will now come in to look at the proposed declaration on African biodiversity. And then finally, on the last day, the 5th of November, we will then have the Heads of State Summit, where Heads of State will now be approving the declaration, but more importantly, also defining the actions that will need to be undertaken to meet the commitments that we'll have set out for ourselves in the declaration.
All right. Now, coming to you, Dr. again, beyond just logistics, what about Botswana or Africa's main goal for hosting this summit? What kind of legacy does the government hope to create?
The governments in general, they intend to actually come up with a roadmap, as well as, should I say, commitments, as indicated by Dr. Taolo. So those will actually be implemented until such time that they are able to convene another biodiversity summit. And therefore, it's a very important gathering, both for Botswana as a country, and also Botswana as a member of the African Union and the continent at large.
All right. Now, looking at the African countries, or Botswana to be particularly, we are talking about, everyone coming under one roof to deliberate on these issues. And we're talking about lawmakers. How has governments of different nations have taken this issue of biodiversity in black and white to say, we're putting this in black and white, this is what ought to be done? How have we, engaged in different governments have engaged in this?
Well, following the global biodiversity framework that was actually, should I say, enacted, if I may use such a term, at global level. The African Union also worked with member states and regional economic communities to develop what we call the African Union Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. In other words, that's the continental instrument guiding our engagement on issues of biodiversity. And then, in addition to that, individual member states are also developing their own frameworks, policy frameworks, to be able to manage their biodiversity better. So basically, all I'm saying is that at continental level, member states have come together to develop a policy framework, and of course, they are now domesticating it with through their own instruments. But I think, in general, member states are united on this matter, and they all see value in conserving their biodiversity.
All right. Earlier on, the doctor just mentioned some of the themes that will be discussed. How are these aligned with Botswana or Africa's environmental priorities?
Well, I think as Dr. Nyambe has just indicated, Botswana is part of Africa, and therefore we are fully aligned in terms of our vision for biodiversity conservation here on the continent. We have our own national biodiversity strategy and action plan, which is aligned to the African strategy that has just been mentioned. We are also fully aligned to international conventions on the issue of biodiversity, like the Convention on Biological Diversity. There, Botswana has undertaken to meet certain targets through the Global Biodiversity Framework. And this really serves as our true north in terms of biodiversity conservation, management, and ensuring that we benefit meaningfully from our biodiversity. So we are really looking forward to engaging with other African nations on this very important subject, because we are fully aware that our biodiversity is not just confined to within our borders. We share our biodiversity with our neighbors, and it's important that as we manage our biodiversity, we ensure that whatever we do is in sync with our neighbors, so that we are all looking and working in one common direction. So I believe that this summit will really offer that opportunity. But I think also, going back to your earlier question, in terms of the benefits to Botswana, by hosting this summit, we have an opportunity to bring international delegates to visit Botswana, to experience our culture, hospitality, and our tourism products. So we are looking forward to ensuring that our visitors, our guests, not only have a productive conference, but they also have an opportunity to visit the attractions that Botswana has, including our very important national parks and game reserves, which are our reservoirs for our biodiversity here in Botswana. And furthermore, also to have an opportunity to interact with the communities who live side by side with these resources.
All right. Now, on the very same breath, because he mentioned working with other countries, because our biodiversity is not confined within the borders of this country. We have to work together with other African countries. Why is it important to make sure that we even, I would use this word, to benchmark from other countries on how they are working around this? Because we are bringing different heads of different, people from different countries, African countries, even the world to Botswana. Why is it important to learn from these other countries how they work, or they have moved forward in terms of biodiversity?
It's always important to benchmark, because you may find that, for example, Botswana may be, should I say, advanced in terms of conserving certain species like elephants. But you may also find that maybe another country is even better when it comes to aquatic environments like freshwater resources. So at the end of the day, it's about give and take. You share the best practices that you have, but you also learn lessons from others. So at the end of the day, member states are able to support one another, to exchange best practices, but also where other member states have got gaps. Those who are better off can also extend a hand of assistance, even in terms of sharing experts, to be able to make sure that they also get the support that they need.
All right. Earlier you mentioned that it's also important to be together or to interact with people living within these areas of conservation. Botswana, or Africa through indigenous knowledge, is globally recognized for its wildlife and conservation success. Now, how would this summit showcase these achievements to the international community?
Yes, I think that's a very important aspect of what we intend to showcase during this summit. We will be bringing in communities who are living side by side with these resources to share their experiences with the delegates. Botswana recently promulgated the access and benefit sharing legislation. This is a very important piece of legislation to ensure that communities benefit meaningfully from the genetic resources that they have in their areas. So this is an opportunity to showcase, but then also to learn. I think you talked about the issues of benchmarking, sharing of lessons. That will be critical. And that is why we have created space during the summit for technical delegations and others to showcase, to have side events and have exhibits. The expectation they will be coming in to come and show us what they are doing, and we can also have an opportunity to show exactly what we are doing. So I think the issue of indigenous knowledge really goes to the heart of how our communities benefit meaningfully from these biodiversity resources. So in that regard, we need to create the space for them to meaningfully benefit. And we are well aware that we have got a lot of resources that the rest of the world desires. We have had experiences where our genetic resources, our biodiversity, has been removed from our shores here in Africa and taken to other continents where they are benefiting meaningfully from these resources. But we are saying now this is the time to bring the technologies here to ensure that we are able to beneficiate, add value to these resources, and also as Africa stand on our 2 feet now when it comes to not just conserving our biodiversity, but benefiting meaningfully.
All right, we have got 2 minutes to wrap up this conversation. Now we're still with you quickly. Our local researchers, conservationists, and communities contributes are going to be allowed to come and contribute to the summit.
We're expecting a cross-section of stakeholders. Researchers are very key in ensuring that we protect our biodiversity. So we will have local researchers and international researchers who will be present during the summit.
All right, now we are wrapping up the conversation with this question that I'm going to pose to both of you. After the summit, how will Botswana or Africa ensure that the agreements, resolutions, or ideas discussed here translate into tangible, conservation actions?
What will happen is that once we have got a declaration of heads of states, we are going to develop an implementation framework for that, where we, like a result framework, if you will, where we'll actually outline all the actions that are proposed there, how we are going to implement them, as well as how we are going to track implementation. And of course, related to that, then will be a resource mobilization plan so that we are able to mobilize the necessary resources and continue, of course, to work with the government of Botswana as the chair, moving forward.
All right, in less than 30 seconds as we are wrapping up.
Well, from our perspective, yes, we will be committing to the same action plan, and it will be important for us to put in place the mechanisms to monitor and report back to Botswana that we are indeed meaningfully implementing the very important declaration that our heads of state will have signed up to.